Ever wondered how political parties in India are funded? Well, one of the ways was through something called the Electoral Bond Scheme. Introduced by the Indian government in the Finance Bill of 2017 and implemented in 2018, the Electoral Bond Scheme was designed to cleanse the political funding system in India. The scheme introduced electoral bonds, a type of bearer banking instrument, used to fund political parties eligible to run campaigns under Section 29A of the Representation of the People Act, 1951. Much like bearer bonds or promissory notes, the issuer of these electoral bonds, typically a bank, serves as the custodian and pays the bondholder, which in this case is the political party. The twist? The name or any other details of the donor are not entered on the bond, making the electoral bonds anonymous. This anonymity was not without a purpose. In fact, it was integral to the scheme's goal of bringing transparency to political funding in India. You might be wondering, how does anonymity bring transparency? Well, the idea was to encourage donors to move away from cash donations, often untraceable and susceptible to illicit practices, and instead use these bonds, which despite being anonymous, were still channeled through a banking institution, thus ensuring some degree of regulation and oversight. These bonds, as anonymous as they were, stirred quite a buzz. But why so? Let's delve into it. The electoral bond scheme, while innovative, didn't escape controversies. Some hailed it as a step towards transparency, while others saw it as a veil for corruption. One of the major controversies surrounding electoral bonds was the anonymity they provided to donors. This feature was intended to protect donors from potential repercussions for their political affiliations. However, critics argued that it increased opacity in political funding, making it difficult for citizens to know who was funding their political representatives. Another controversy was the potential for money laundering, as electoral bonds could be purchased with cash, and the identity of the donor remained anonymous. Critics expressed concerns that the scheme could be used to convert black money into white. This fear was fueled by the fact that there was no cap on the amount of money that could be donated through electoral bonds, which could potentially allow large sums of illicit money to enter the political system undetected. Furthermore, the scheme was perceived to give unequal political influence to those who could afford to make large donations. Critics argued that this could undermine the democratic process, as wealthy individuals or corporations could potentially sway political decisions in their favor through large donations. The primary beneficiary of the scheme, the Bharatiya Janata Party, received over half of the donations made through the scheme. This led to accusations of a skewed playing field, with critics arguing that the scheme was not so much a tool for transparency, but rather a mechanism for legal corruption. The scheme was also criticized for its potential to facilitate quid pro quo arrangements. As the identities of donors remained anonymous, it was feared that large donors could influence policy decisions without the public's knowledge. In essence, while the scheme was introduced with the noble intention of bringing transparency to political funding in India, it found itself at the center of a swirl of controversies. Critics believed that rather than cleaning the system, it had the potential to further muddy the waters. With such concerns, the scheme was destined for a legal challenge, and indeed it faced one. In 2024, the highest court in India passed a judgment that would shake the foundations of political funding in the country. The Supreme Court of India, in a landmark verdict, declared the electoral bond scheme as unconstitutional. This decision was rooted in the principle that the scheme violated the right to information of the citizens. The court stated that this breach had a significant impact on free speech and expression under Article 19, 1A of the Constitution. This was a significant point, as free speech forms the bedrock of any democratic society, and transparency in political funding is a crucial part of that. The court also directed the State Bank of India, the issuing authority of these bonds, to stop their issuance. This was a significant move, as it effectively halted the primary mechanism through which political parties received anonymous donations. But the court didn't stop at that. Furthermore, the court ordered the State Bank of India to furnish details of donations made through electoral bonds. Not only that, but the bank was also directed to provide details about the political parties which had received the contributions. All of this information was to be handed over to the Election Commission by March 6, 2024. This was another significant step, as it sought to peel back the layers of anonymity that had previously shrouded these donations. Moreover, the court ruled that electoral bonds that had not been encashed by political parties had to be returned to the purchaser. This ensured that unclaimed funds did not remain within the political system, further enhancing the transparency of the process. Finally, the court also quashed amendments made to the Income Tax Act and the Representation of People Act, which had made the donations anonymous. This move dismantled the legal infrastructure that had enabled the opacity of political funding. The verdict was seen as a victory for transparency and democracy. But what does this mean for the future of political funding in India? The verdict didn't just put an end to the scheme, it potentially changed the landscape of political funding in India. With the Supreme Court's verdict, the curtain has fallen on the electoral bonds system, and this has far-reaching implications. The most immediate impact is on political funding. With the reinstatement of corporate donation limits, the potential for quid pro quo arrangements and the disproportionate influence of companies in political contributions has been curtailed. This could lead to a more level playing field, where the voice of the common citizen is as important as the sound of corporate cash registers. But the verdict also poses challenges. With the electoral bond system, there was at least some semblance of regulation. Now parties might have to return to the old system of cash donations, which is far less transparent and much harder to regulate. The potential for corruption and the influence of black money in politics could increase. Yet, there are also opportunities. The verdict has put the spotlight firmly on the need for transparency in political funding. This could spur the government and the Election Commission to come up with new, innovative ways of ensuring that political funding is clean, transparent, and above board. This could lead to stronger laws, stricter enforcement, and even the use of technology to track and monitor political donations. The verdict could also have a significant impact on the upcoming general elections. With the BJP being the largest beneficiary of the electoral bond system, the verdict could potentially level the playing field for other political parties. This could make the elections more competitive and unpredictable, and could even change the political landscape of the country. The Supreme Court's verdict is not just a judgment on a financial instrument. It is a statement on the need for transparency, fairness, and accountability in the political process. It is a call for a better, cleaner, and more democratic system of political funding. The future of political funding in India is at a crossroads. The verdict has started a new chapter in this saga. The journey of the electoral bond scheme from its introduction to its eventual verdict has been an intriguing tale. This scheme, introduced as a bearer banking instrument in the Finance Bill of 2017, was intended to cleanse the political funding system in India. It was a bold step, allowing for anonymous donations, with the State Bank of India acting as the custodian, paying the bondholder or the political party. However, controversy soon surrounded the electoral bonds. Critics argued that the anonymity of the bonds created opacity in political funding, leading to an uneven playing field and potentially enabling legal corruption. Despite these concerns, the bonds were issued and used for political funding. The Supreme Court of India, in a landmark verdict, declared the electoral bond scheme unconstitutional. The Apex Court held that the scheme violated the citizens' right to information, impacting free speech and expression. The court ordered the State Bank of India to stop issuing these bonds and to furnish details of donations through electoral bonds to the Election Commission. Additionally, electoral bonds that were not encashed by political parties were to be returned to the purchaser. The implications of this verdict are far-reaching. It disrupts the existing political funding structure and calls for more transparency. It also highlights the need for scrutiny, the importance of citizens' right to information, and the role of the judiciary in upholding democratic values. While the chapter of electoral bonds may have ended, the story of political funding in India continues. The search for a transparent, accountable, and effective method of political funding remains a challenge. As we navigate this complex and evolving landscape, it is essential to stay informed and engaged. Keep watching this space for more insights into the world of Indian politics. Thank you for watching.